I'll ask the first question from Tilahun. In terms of the blog, is there a length that works very well? Like, as in, do you have a word count that would work in terms of, do you keep it short, long, in terms of getting the audience? Because the school has one as well, and we're always trying to figure out what's the best way of doing it. This is. Yeah, sorry. So my question was, in terms of a blog, how long should a blog be to get people like interested in reading up? Yeah.
The question is initially directed to you.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, but.
Yeah, actually, this sharing experience develops progressively.
Yeah.
And the blog needs much promotion at the initial stage, particularly through other social media outlets like the Facebook. So I was inviting some colleagues to share the blog, and through time, the number of followers is developing.
Okay.
My answer is twice half its length.
Okay.
Well, the shorter the better. Attention span has definitely decreased over the last 15 years, and around 300 words, 300 to 400 words, people lose interest, I think, after that in a blog.
Okay.
My question is kind of leading on from that. What do you find are the best methods to sort of disseminate a blog through the subscription list, through tweeting? How do you kind of get that blog post out there?
Maybe we'll go in reverse order. I think a combination of Twitter and blog is the only way your blog will get noticed. We need something else, as Hugh pointed out, besides just a blog. A blog sits in that far left corner that you had forever, because there's so many. So you need something else to promote it. Maybe Facebook, which I'm not on. But certainly Twitter increases numbers significantly if people look at it.
I would probably say I would agree on the Twitter side of things. But the other one as well, I think one that's often discounted is email. People actually, and a lot of people like to be able to receive, if you're blogging 5 times a day, they want to receive an email about every single blog post, but a weekly digest and things like that, a lot of people will actually sign up for it. They start thinking your content's valuable.
Yeah, in my case also, the Facebook and the Twitter, actually the number of subscribers to the blog is also increasing.
Okay.
I was just going to add a quick comment about blogs because I'm also part of the I Can network, which is a rethink of autism, making autism mean I can, not I can't. And we started on the 19th of September last year, so we're still very much in the growing phase. And before our camp, our website wasn't being updated as quickly or as efficiently as it needed to. So I'm not experienced on the web at all, but I just set up a blog for the ICANN network and posted things like how to get to General where the camp was and other things, through embedded maps and stuff. And I used Twitter and also Facebook to spread the news about the blog. And I don't know how many people follow the blog, but I know that more people look at the blog after I've tweeted it because we've got 100 people following us on Twitter now, and about 216 now members on our group.
Well, my question goes to you actually, with respect to the social networks. To what extent do you think that we can use Tumblr, Reddit, DeviantArt, Flickr, Instagram, for instance? So you're going to lose a huge chunk of your time, while you could have actually done it at home, wherever you're posting your pictures of holidays and other things. How do you think they're going to add to your research profile? That's my first thing. And the second thing is, for instance, as you actually mentioned that LinkedIn being an online CV, so I know there is another thing, it's called ResearchGate, which could also be a proxy for the research CV. But at the same time, don't you think that if people start actually looking at those websites as proxies to your CV, then you're going to miss out lots of things that you actually put in your CV, like short courses, trainings, and and little publications which you possibly actually forgot to put in LinkedIn profile or researcher profile. So how do you actually compensate for that lacking in LinkedIn and ResearchGate? That's the second part of the question. First part of the question, how much do you want to be in research network by compensating your time on research?
So, answering the second question first, I would say that, the role of a LinkedIn profile is as an online CV. And so if there are things on your LinkedIn that you would put on your CV that aren't there, then maybe you need to update your LinkedIn. But I mean, the other side of that as well, and something that I've always said in part of this e-professionalism movement, is the question of what's going to happen particularly as younger people graduate university and start moving into the workforce. You need to start thinking earlier and earlier now about how it is that you want to curate your online identity and control, essentially, to sort of sum it up, to control the Google results. What do you want to appear? And will that be your Facebook profile? And if so, how is that going to be presented? If that will be your LinkedIn profile, how will that be presented? But you really need to start thinking about that earlier and earlier now. And it doesn't necessarily have to be LinkedIn. It could just as easily be, yourname.com with your CV on it. So any sort of, channel does the job. But they obviously provide different avenues. The first question, as far as the time, again, I lean towards the twice half the length you're willing to spend answer. But I think it's something where, depending on what it is that you're looking for, you can find some really fascinating insights in some of those really weird places. And so even things like, for example, you look at platforms like Reddit, which traditionally you wouldn't think is a particularly interesting network for researchers. It's mostly full of cat photos and pictures of food. But interestingly, there are some really, really interesting communities and conversations, and whether, particularly if you're interested in sort of more the sociology of a particular subject area, or even the sociology of how people relate online, those platforms can be a really interesting insight into, how, I guess, the everyday community type person, how they're actually responding to issues. Having said that, they're not necessarily representing the entire population, that's my statistical disclaimer. But, it is really one of those things where, yes, you can spend way too much time on them, and you can spend way too much time spending all of your time on every single platform. But you need to be able to, as part of that, I guess, capacity to develop and understand time management and everything else, that's now part of that process. Where once it might be television, now it's social media that's part of that time management process you need to learn.
So essentially, you're trying to say that you need to choose your own platform and make sure that you don't actually overrate with respect to your time. Like for instance, 10 years ago, I used to be a regular DeviantArt, and then again, I figured out that there are not many people who are using it, and there are not many people who are relevant to my research. So then I actually left DeviantArt 5-6 years ago. So essentially, then I actually stuck with the platforms which I think as most audiences are relevant to my research. So do you believe that that's the case?
Yeah, so, and look, it depends. And as you go more towards networks like DeviantArt, which is the sort of very niche, I guess, an artist, sort of digital artist type network. As you go more niche, you typically have a lower number of people using it, but typically those who do use it obviously are more engaged. And so it's that difficult trade-off between, very, very niche services, like that. You can probably find a community somewhere online that is about people who like eating Alice lollies on the tram, and there's probably about 4 people in there. But, there's still value in a very highly niche audience. It's just that question of, are you looking for something that is niche, or are you looking for something that is broad?
There was a question at the back.
Thanks. I have a quick comment and a question. And my comment is just one of the risks I've found in blogging is the risk of getting involved in debates and rants that are not quite related to your research. I mean, I've got a research-related blog, but that's really a risk. But the question, which you may not be able to answer, but I would like to explore a bit more, because it's really starting to concern me now, is that one that Hugh you alluded to, and I think would be relevant to Tilahun as well. That is it published first or not? If you put drafts, or I've been discussing some of the theoretical approaches I'll take, and I'm probably going to write in my thesis and maybe in articles as well. And I'm really unclear about that issue of does this mean it's been published first or not? So can you comment further on that, and Tilahun, has that affected you in your blogging?
So, yeah, you're right in saying I don't know the answer. And I think it is very difficult. And even there have been people that have started to sort of do that. I guess that trend towards, you know, open access, even open access reviewing as well. And so as we start to do that, like, I know that there's a couple of things where people start to use things essentially like Google Docs to be able to provide community input into a paper, either, you know, pre or during publication. You know, and so what's that really going to mean compared to the traditional publishing environment that we have? And I think that the answer is, I suspect, is probably going to be a bit of publishing and the nature of publishing and what is acceptable to be published in the journal will change. And additionally, I think people will need to start sort of being more careful, not that they're not careful already, but those considerations will start to come out is, oh, I actually can't discuss that on Twitter, or I can't discuss that on my blog because I'm planning on publishing it, or, you know, something like that. So I think there'll be a bit of movement from both sides.
Yeah, in my case also, it depends actually on the purpose of the blog. If it is to communicate research findings with a different issue, if it is to provoke some debates and discussions, that is a different issue. So the purpose of my blog is particularly to provoke, initiate discussions and debates on some issues, not to communicate on research findings. So it depends on the purpose of the blog, basically.
Well, sorry, John.
Yeah, it wasn't really addressed to me, but I think you have to be aware of the journal requirements always, publish in mainstream journals, which we still do. I think open access is great, it changes in peer review rate, but there's a cohort of journals that are really, really important. And whereas things are done properly, you just have to respect what they require as far as what can put out to the press.
So, two questions.
Thank you all for inspiring us. My question is just regarding your opinion on having two Twitter accounts or two Facebook accounts, one personal and one professional, keeping time with respect to the one. So, what do you think of that?
So, again, it's a good question. And it comes down to that question of, are the two audiences that separate? And that's what I often keep coming back to when I think about, you know, should we be having personal Twitter accounts and professional Twitter accounts and a personal Facebook account, a professional Facebook account. If the audiences are so separate that you want to totally segregate them, then yes, I'd say it's worthwhile. Because obviously, as you get more fragmented, it costs you more time. But having said that, and one of the other things that we need to consider as well is that with this whole social media revolution of types, is that people walk into a filter bubble. And so, for example, on Twitter, I rarely see any sports news. I don't follow sport, so I don't follow people that tweet about sport. And so is that a potential loss from my point of view? So there's actually potentially value in having those kind of places where sometimes you do show something and you do start talking about things that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise talk about.
I think this is going to be our last question because I think people are waiting to come in here, so sorry.
Thank you very much. We were just going to make a comment actually about publication and in public domain. We've actually had experience of that. So we published something on our website, an article which we then revised and submitted to a journal. They will actually search for titles before they accept. So we actually use this, when I say we, Anthology Australia, we use the same title on our public article as we did on the journal article. The outcome of it was that we had to actually make a declaration that had been published before. So I'd suggest that if you are going to do it, it might be different with Twitter if you just put in parts of it. If you are explicit and say you have published it or where you've published it, then I suppose it's up to the editor to decide whether they're going to publish it or not. So yeah, we'll take that on board.